Hi, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. There's Laundry Day out of Mamawala. How's it going?
It's going well. There's a siren going on, so I'm going to let you talk for a bit.
It's an emergency. The Cubs have won a little more than half their games against I guess just in general, but against this stretch of terrible teams that they're playing. They just came off a much-needed daytime win against the Tigers yesterday to get some good feeling back after the Drew Smyly, not even really the Drew Smyly game. He was the starting pitcher in it, gave up 4 runs, and then the Cubs came back and tied it, and they just left him in to continue, and then he gave up more runs.
Not since the Brian Mattis game, TR. In 2016, that the Cubs actually won, of course, the infamous John Lester walk-off bunt. It's a weird. I don't know how you feel right now. I'm in this kind of like weird middle ground with the Cubs, where they're like technically doing what they need to be doing, but not in a way that makes you really feel comfortable about how they're doing it, and that concerns me a bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, right now I think I'm pulling the standings up now, but I think they're in a playoff position as far as today goes, correct?
Correct. They're a half game up ahead of 3 other teams who are tied a half game back for the 3rd wild card. So Cubs are in the second spot right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that wild card thing is just such a big sloppy mess with so many teams involved in it. It's hard to feel comfortable about any of it because then any team can get on a weird win streak and then you're out. Totally. They're sitting here 3.5 games back of the Brewers and tied with the Reds. And I kind of thought the Reds were on their way fading out of here, and they haven't quite done that. So yeah, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't feel super comfortable, but 66 and 6 games over 500 is like, I mean, at this point I spent so much of this year being like, they're not this bad. And now I'm like, I think this is about right. This feels like about what this team is, if not even maybe a little better. So,
yeah. Because, I mean, the last time we recorded, I believe it was after the first game of the White Sox 2-game series. What followed that, obviously, was the Morel walk-off, which is like, that was one of those, you know how when they show the stats of like, a team's percentage chance to win the game before this pitch and after this pitch?
Yeah.
That was like that, but for vibes in general, where it's that went from maybe one of the worst losses of the season to probably the best win and best ending of the season. I would say it's probably a tie with the talk off.
The talk off catch against the Cardinals. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean that would have been a sweep at home to the White Sox, right? Like a mini sweep, a tiny little dustbuster, basically, like of the 2 games losing at home, but against like a team that sucks and has like the worst vibes in America out of any team, the White Sox. So it's just it's so funny. I don't know if you saw that, but they fired Kenny Williams and Hahn, so the top of baseball operations, and then they actually, it seems like a joke, but they're bringing back Tony La Russa as an advisor in some capacity.
I didn't even know that, and I was literally going to make that joke right now.
Yeah,
and it's already happened.
Yeah, and not like as a manager or anything, but it's just funny. So yes, losing to a team had just that bad twice in a row at home would have been like, what are we doing, guys? This is not, you were not serious people meme, kind of.
Exactly,
but that was incredible to see. And as someone who, we've talked with our friend Ken and sometimes co-host of the show, Ken, about this. And I think he and I probably suffer this to a greater extreme than you do maybe, but like we've both struggled emotionally to connect to this era of Cubs like we have to others. But Morel in particular is a guy I can fully connect with. And so not just the turnaround of the win, but watching him do that was a tremendous way to kick off this week.
I'll be honest with you, based on the way he celebrated that home run, if he were to ever like Joe Carter it, like hit a World Series winning home run, he would fully have his penis out by the time he gets home.
Yeah, he'd be cartwheeling and flopping all over the place. It was like I did appreciate that he just sort of was like, yeah, usually guys who do this, they end up with their shirts off, but usually other people take their shirts
Sure.
off.
Yeah.
So it was funny that he just had that thing in his mind where he's like, I know where this is going, play the music, and then just starts the striptease.
Yeah.
Great stuff. But yeah, and then it's been, it's been kind of up and down this week since then. And even though the Cubs are still in a stretch of playing terrible teams, it's just hard to sweep people. But as you said, they did what they need to do. Is 2 out of 3 from Detroit, right?
Right, and I think that's the thing. It's like you look at the last so 8 games, right? 2 against the White Sox, 3 against the Royals, 3 against the Tigers, and you've won 5 of those 8 games, right? You've split the first one, then you've won the next 2 series. So 5-3 is not bad, but I think going into it, especially knowing how crucial these games are, you're hoping to at least maybe sweep one of them, maybe sweep the short 2-game set against the White Sox, and I think where we landed was you're going into a 12-game stretch. Now we've played 8 of the 12. There's 4 left against Pittsburgh. I mean, the absolute bare minimum is splitting a series against Pittsburgh, but that is not good enough. You gotta you win 3 of 4 here. If you win 3 of 4, you now have that 8-4 stretch over 12 games, which like nobody. I don't care how bad the teams are. It's still a professional baseball team. You're never gonna quabble with winning 2/3 of your games.
No, yeah. That's a great pace, and it's still a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. Where there's obviously
Right.
a couple of tricky series, but it trends easy.
Yeah, but I think the thing that's been, it's not that they've lost games because teams lose games, and you can't. It would have been insane to go into this stretch and be like, well, the Cubs are going to go 12-0. Like even the best teams in baseball don't do that. But I think it's the way that they've lost and the kind of stubbornness with which they've lost in both of those last 2 games that has been super frustrating because you look at the Friday loss to Kansas City, and I would argue that a lot of that loss was because of Patrick Wisdom starting at first base. And then you look at the loss this week against the Tigers, and it's hard to not say that 95% of the loss was starting Drew Smyly. And it's not Smiley's fault that he's been put in those positions, unless he's really going to say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be very good today. I think you should go with someone else. He only has so much control over it. So I don't know if it's coming from above Ross or if it's Ross maintaining this stubbornness, but we've seen it so many times this year, whether it's Hosmer or even Barnhart to some degree before he was DFA'd. Obviously Mancini, Mastrobuoni being in certain spots that he shouldn't be in. And that's not to say that Ross hasn't also pushed the right buttons in certain spots, even like using Smyly out of the bullpen at times when I thought was maybe a bit of a risk, like he's come through, or putting Fulmer in that high leverage spot in the Morel game. But the point is, like, right now, and I think it might just be kind of a bluff to not give any teams, an advantage. You look at the Cubs' projected starters. Drew Smyly is still listed.
Yeah.
He's listed to start the final game in Pittsburgh, and I'm hoping it's Jordan Wicks, and maybe that'll be the case, or some sort of piggyback situation. But like, I don't understand how you look at what Drew Smyly just did, or really what he's done in the past 2 months, and you say to yourself, we are giving ourselves a chance to win this game right now.
Yeah, I think everything you outlined there is just an example of the Cubs have just been learning a little too slow this year, all year.
Right.
They've sort of learned eventually with a lot of these things, but they've just been a little bit slow on all the decisions. And part of that is like
the putting someone on the IL 4 days later, but make it a whole season.
Yeah, kind of right. With Hosmer and with Mancini and new Cincinnati Red Trey Mancini, by the way. So watch him just go ape shit against the Cubs this that first weekend of September. But he was picked up on waivers by them. And yeah, I mean, like the Smyly thing in particular, Smyly obviously, it was a long time ago when he almost threw a perfect game this year. So he had a stretch both last year and early this year where he was an actively good starting pitcher, but he hasn't been for a long time now. And the thing is, he had found success working in the bullpen, and not just as a long man. They were working him in like 1 inning stints and stuff. So that has an effect on how pitchers are conditioned and prepared. Going down to 1 inning, and then expecting him to come up and play as a full starter is just goofy to me. It just really isn't defensible, and that's why I don't think they should have started Smyly in general. But after he gave up 4 runs and the Cubs came back to tie it, you cannot have him keep going. That's
Right.
absurd. That's I mean, that's just bad management. And you have to, especially since Wisniewski did come in eventually. Well, that's your length
Hmm.
guy. Why wasn't he immediately in once the Cubs tied it up again? That's just bad strategy. And like, it's easy to focus on the things that don't go well while overlooking some of the things that do go according to plan
Hmm.
sometimes. But that's just one where it's not hindsight, it's sight. Everyone saw it happening, and the Cubs just like, they're not good enough to get away with that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I don't really know what the plan is going to be moving forward here, and we're kind of at a point where if if anyone else gets injured on the Cubs starting staff, I think the playoffs are not going to happen because like Steele has really been the only starting pitcher that the Cubs have had who's been good the whole year.
The whole time,
Like
right?
Hendricks has had some ups and downs, and obviously he wasn't there at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Tyon has had this weird year where he was like one of the worst pitchers in baseball for the first half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Then he was really good. And yesterday, that's one of those hindsight things where maybe you say, okay, he gets the first 2 outs there, you bring in somebody else, but like that, the difference of that at bat is like one of his better starts of the season
Mm-hmm.
to go no hit, 5 no hit innings, then load the bases, then get out of it, versus it ended up just not being a very good start because he gave up 4 runs in 6 innings. And I
Yeah.
don't know that I would have taken him out there. I think if he gets, you either take him out with the base loaded and nobody out and just say like he doesn't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But once the guy gets 2 outs and looks pretty
Yeah.
good doing it, I don't think it's a weird thing to be like, well, he can get one more out. And he also wasn't like pitching against Torkelson. Like I forget who hit that home run, but it's not some person who's like the best hitter in the world.
Kerry Carpenter, was it? Was that
Yeah,
the
yeah,
yeah?
yeah.
Who actually has been good this year? He has, I think he's OPS and over 800, and that was his 19th homer, I think. So he's a good bat, but it's sort of like, it's his second year. He's not super established. It was just a terrible pitch. I think the pitch
Yeah.
selection was bad. There was a 3-ball count, so I guess he's going fastball if he feels like that's what he can keep in the zone. But Tyone, I think Brendan Miller on Cubs Twitter was pointing out how ineffective his four seamer has been at times this year, and that's exactly what he threw. He threw it in a terrible place and it got crushed. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just that's just writing the margins. But Tyone has been, yeah, he's probably been right there at, with Hendricks, maybe a touch above as the second guy you've been able to count on in recent months. Because yeah, it's besides Steele, no one else has really matched up consistently throughout the years. Stroman started like a Cy Young contender, fell off, did a body swap with Tyone. When Tyone got good,
Right.
Stroman got awful, and then Stroman got injured with his hip, and then now there's other stuff going on that is bizarre. That he went up to the booth like a week ago to explain his injury, how he didn't know how he injured himself. There's like, what is the specific Marcus Stroman injury? What is
It's like
the
a rib related
yeah, I
situation.
thought I was wanted to say it's like some sort of rib fracture or something. It's weird. No one seems to, and even when he went up to the booth on his own during the game, which is bizarre, but that's
Yeah, that's I didn't even know he did that.
yeah, Marcus Stroman stuff. He sounded like he still like he didn't know what happened either. So anyway, all to say that's been weird. The starting rotation it's really gotten thin pretty quick. Ben Brown down on the farm also has been injured. He was dominating the beginning of
Hmm.
the year, was a little ineffective, and then got injured as well. And the two pitchers I think we might see soon, Jordan Wicks, who is a top 10 type prospect in the Cubs system. I think most people have him ranked in that like 5 to 7 range in the Cubs
Hmm.
system. First round pick from a couple years ago, left-handed starter, and our friend Greg Huss did a pretty good summation of what we can expect from him if he does come up. And he was scratched from the start yesterday, so it seems like they're preparing him to maybe come up and piggyback with Tyone or something. But probably a back of the rotation guy. Like not like
Yeah.
this isn't you can't be expecting super ace stuff from this guy, but like
Hmm.
He's got a couple of really good pitches, and he's a bulldog out there. And him, and then former reliever, all-star reliever for your Immaculate Grid weirdos out there, Shane Green is a guy that the Cubs picked up, and just went 5 innings in his last Iowa start. So it seems like they're stretching out Shane Green to start. So those are the 2 names to keep an eye on, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you can't be reliant on a guy like Wicks who hasn't pitched in the major leagues to
hasn't debuted,
come into a pennant race and be effective. But I am cautiously optimistic that Smiley doesn't actually start that game, or if he does, he quote unquote starts it but goes 2 innings, and then it's kind of just because that's what they were trying to do initially with him, right? Is do the kind of Tampa Bay Rays, we're going to have you start the game and pitch an inning or 2, and then we're going to piggyback it.
Right, like go through the lineup once, something like that. And I think it's tough because, once you start building the whole pitching staff out of that, it really tires out a lot of your bullpen. But I mean, that's kind of where we are now, is just like, I don't know, it's going to have to be spread around a lot of pitchers, and maybe that is where you start utilizing that Iowa shuttle a little bit. And obviously, if guys are coming up and down, those aren't guys you're necessarily super trusting in high leverage situations, but eat innings and keep you in the game when the offense has been doing pretty well. I mean, Seiya Suzuki took his sort of sit-down reset and has come back and been really good over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and Morel's been scuffling as well. He
Yes.
he got a nice knock yesterday, and really, I think it's weird because he has one of the most memorable moments of the past week, arguably of the season, but that came in the midst of him really not looking good at the plate. So we'll see. He's getting some days off, and hopefully that will help, or maybe he needs a few days off to clear his head. But it is amazing what a difference Candelario makes, what a difference having Madrigal healthy and in the lineup is. And as much as we've, I think, at times like clowned on Madrigal, he's been really solid. You look at his offensive numbers, especially his numbers with running and scoring position, he's been very good. And I feel like earlier in the year, there were times where you'd get past maybe the top 5 in the Cubs lineup and be like, where on earth is the run going to come from in this inning? When you have like a bottom of the lineup that is, Tucker Barnhart, Eric Hosmer, and name whoever else, Mastrobuoni, and you're like, there is an almost 0% chance, unless somebody runs into one, that the Cubs score in this inning. So you're just like punting innings. Right now, the Cubs have what feels like kind of a deep lineup. I do agree that Happ hitting third and that just being like what you do forever feels like a weird choice.
It is weird. It feels like a 90s baseball choice. Because, I mean, the third is not where last year or this year's version of Happ should be hitting. I mean, like he's still gotten on base at a really good clip. Like, I've seen people being like, I shouldn't have extended Happ. He's average, whatever. He's not average. He's an above average player. Like, this year he's going to clock close to, I think, probably around 3 wins above replacement. That's good. But I think he's not showing the power as consistently as he did before, but he's getting on base at a really high clip. So it just has to be a situation where either have him at the very top of the lineup, or you got to move him down a little bit, because like that's it. And when Tauchman's in there, him as a leadoff hitter has been really good. So if you want to stack those 2 guys 1-2 or some sort of 1-9 scenario with those guys, I'm into it. But yeah, I think it's not the most important thing in the world, but I do think it's, as we talked about earlier, the Cubs just like learning lessons a little too late this year. Happ third, it just seems like it's coming up a lot lately where that's not exactly the guy you want in that spot.
Right, or the game ends with Bellinger in the on-deck circle, which is not
right. And you mentioned Candelario. Candelario's been hitting deeper down in the lineup. I mean, and we have Nico Horner hitting second, who on many days when you run out the lineup has the worst OPS in the whole lineup. He makes contacts, he steals bases, love it. But when you have arguably, probably your maybe 7th best hitter hitting second in Nico, and then Ian hitting third, who's not really providing a ton of power, it's not optimizing where you should be. I mean, you bump Candelario up into one of those spots, and even possibly move Bellinger up a little bit, and I think you're scoring a little, runs in bunches a little more.
Yeah, Candelario feels like a weird two hitter, but I feel like there's a case to be made for it. I mean, he takes his walks, he gets on base. I think
Yeah.
if you have a lineup with, I guess it depends on who's in center. Like if Bellinger's in center versus Talkman, but I think some combination of like, even if you do like Dansby three and Bellinger
Hmm.
four, and then you throw Candelario five and
Yeah.
Hap sixth, I think that makes more sense probably.
Yeah, yeah, I do too. So it's just been so those 2-3 spots weirdly have just been have not been
Yeah.
not really been idealized, I
And
don't think.
honestly, in times when Horner and Madrigal are in the lineup, I would rather have Madrigal two and have Horner eighth or ninth.
Well, and like I mean, yeah, I'm looking at the offense right here. So for the year, Madrigal's at a 96 weighted runs created plus, which is 4% below league average. It's been better lately. Obviously, he started really rough this year, but now the average is solid at 277. He only strikes out 8.5% of the time. The on base is 333, which is fine. The slugging is non-existent outside of that White Sox game, 376. And then we've got, let's bring up Nico Horner's numbers. One thing I've loved this year is Nico adding the stolen base element, becoming a genuine base stealer.
Yes,
His
32 stolen
33.
bases.
33.
Yeah.
I can't remember last time the Cubs had a 40 stolen base guy.
No, no.
But he's been worth, so he's weighted runs created plus at 100. So he is exactly league average overall as a bat. And he's hitting basically exactly the same as Madrigal with just a touch more slugging, but
Yeah.
still under 400. But they're both hitting 277, both right around 330 something on base. So yeah, they've been pretty interchangeable with the bat.
Yeah, and you look around the lineup as well. You've got now Bellinger has over 20 home runs. I believe Swanson is right there. Candelario is going to get there. Obviously, a lot of them were on the Nationals and not the Cubs. But yeah, it's amazing how this team has gone from looking like not even a major league caliber roster offensively to, I believe they've said it a number of times during the broadcast. The Cubs have the third most runs produced for an NL team, fifth most in all of baseball. You're talking fifth out of 30 teams. Like,
Yeah, that's
there is
surprising.
no world in which I would have thought the Cubs would be even in the top half of the league coming into this year.
No, that's really surprising to me. That's I guess a prediction I just had wrong. I didn't think they'd be anywhere above middle of the pack, really,
Yeah.
offensively. And Candelario's an addition we didn't expect. We didn't expect Cody Bellinger to be MVP level. And it is interesting. Like I love Cody. Would love the Cubs to keep him. Obviously, it is interesting watching the metrics on Cody, where the thing is he doesn't really hit the ball that hard, generally speaking. But you watch the games and it's like, man, he really maximizes it though. It's like when he gets a hold of one, he does get it a little bit over the wall. And then there's so many like looping line drives this year that he hits that I feel like is put in exactly the right place. But sometimes it's like, it's not just how hard you hit the ball, right? Like launch angle's a thing, and in terms of where you're putting it on the field is a thing, going with the pitch the other way sometimes. Also, as we're talking about offense stuff, I wanted to give a shout out to an interesting tweet that the Cubs PS Plus podcast, Mike Waller's podcast, posted. So it feels like Yan Gomes has been particularly clutch this year, right? Is a thing. Broken down between low leverage, medium leverage, and high leverage. Low leverage situations, Gomes has been at a WRC plus at 66, which means 34% below league average. In high leverage, 164, 64% above league average in high leverage, and in medium leverage, 133, 33% above league average. So it's not just our eyes. Like Gomes has been ridiculous when guys have been, when
Can you look at that stat for Madrigal if you have it?
I don't know how he sorted this, but so I'm just looking at his tweet specifically.
Because I did see that Madrigal is hitting like 375, 380 with runners in scoring position.
Okay, see, and that's a thing where like guys do change their approach at times depending on what is going on here, and Madrigal does have that, that extreme contact ability that could be very helpful when guys are in scoring position.
Yeah. So coming up here, obviously we've got the four in Pittsburgh. The rotation is listed as only two of the four for Pittsburgh are listed, but we've got Steele tonight. We're recording this on Thursday morning. Steele, Hendricks, Assad, who we haven't even talked about him yet, but he's been pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
You can't necessarily rely on that, but I think I almost had completely forgotten who that the other person in the rotation was, but Assad, and then Smiley is listed on Sunday, but we'll
Yeah,
see what happens. But then,
TBD. Yeah.
yeah, the more important thing is that next week you have the big 3 game set against Milwaukee, followed by 4 games at Cincinnati. And for the Brewer series, we're lining up Tyone, Steele, and Hendricks, which you got to feel pretty good about. Those are the 3 people that you would want to face the Brewers. Naturally, the Cubs are going to have to face Corbin Burns and Woodruff those 3 days, but
I mean, it's going to feel like playoffs, right? That's
that whole next week in general will.
Right, and that's coming into the season. I feel like everyone said it so many times, but that's what you wanted to be watching at this point, right? Was you want to be watching playoffs, you want to be watching an actual chase in games that matter.
Right.
And I'm still, when I'm looking at the playoffs, I'm still looking at the division first above the wild card, even though
Sure.
the Cubs are in the wild card spot right now. But I think this is, it's going to be an exciting week, seeing if we can actually do a dent to the Brewers, who I think the Bleacher Nation account said the whole team just has a horseshoe up their ass. They have been just like incredibly lucky with how they've won so many games lately. Little infield slap hit walk off yesterday. They came back to.
Well, they also they had a walk off against the Rockies that was just because of an error. Like there's been a few.
Yeah, and they came back from behind in every game in their series against the White Sox like 2 weeks ago. So but also the Brewers just do that. They're like a well-managed team at the margins. The front office is good. They make adjustments, and they're going to get the play to the best of their ability. So they're a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing about it is that even beyond these important divisional games, the Cubs are entering a stretch now of 13 games against teams who are all right now within half a game of a playoff spot. So they play the Brewers for 3, at the Reds for 4, and then 3 against the Giants and 4 against the Diamondbacks. And the Giants and Diamondbacks are like right in the thick of the wild card race. So it's hard not to think that the season's pretty much going to be decided in the next 14 games or whatever that is. That's not to say that the Cubs couldn't struggle a little bit and then run off some wins against the Cubs play the Rockies 6 times in the last 3 weeks of the season.
That's weird.
Yeah. Pirates. You got to pray that the Braves have clinched by the time the Cubs play them, because otherwise that could be pretty tough. But and you know what? If you told me right now that the Cubs are going to enter that final series against Milwaukee with a chance to catch them or tied, you take your chances. I think maybe it doesn't go the way you want, but what are the Cubs listed at right now for like playoff percentage?
I think it's got to be above 50. Just in terms the fact that
54.7 is what I'm seeing.
Okay, yeah. I mean that sounds right. And to me it feels even higher, like because the schedule is that bad, and because there are so many wild card spots, and the team's just been playing better. It's a better team today than it was earlier in the year too. So I think at this point it would be an active disappointment to not make the playoffs. Like we've transitioned into a part of the year and the schedule where this team should make the playoffs in the National League. I mean, 40% of the National League makes the playoffs now. So it's like that's a lot of playoff teams, but the Cubs should be one of them. It seems like I keep thinking San Diego with their run differential, with the names on the backs of those jerseys, and just that roster put together, that San Diego's gonna make a run up the wild card standings, but they're 4th in the NL West right now. So I mean, like, that just hasn't happened, and at this point the Cubs should be talking. This is a playoff team. They're at least in the wild card.
I mean, I have already done the thing where I'm like kind of looking at what the tentative playoff schedule is and saying to myself, do I need to keep my October open? And
Hmm.
just to even be thinking along those lines is a nice feeling after the last few years.
Yeah. And I guess one name we didn't mention today too that I feel like there's been more and more buzz about PCA possibly
Hmm.
getting a legit call up sometime soon, and it's it's the guy's in AAA now. I believe he began the season in AA, but it's been an incredible run up the organization for that guy,
Yeah.
and he just keeps killing the ball and stealing bases, catching everything in center. So that could be an exciting thing in these next couple weeks. It's starting to feel like PCA is going to at least get a peek at the big leagues
Yeah.
before the end of the year, and as we said earlier, Jordan Wicks, we can probably expect that pretty soon too.
Yeah, and I mean we've seen guys like Mervis who've kind of like worked their way up the up through the system and been really good at every level, and then they come up and they struggle a little bit. It would be it would be really nice to have someone like PCA or like how Chris Bryant was, who just like gets to the big leagues and they're pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, and I'd like to see Mervis back up too. He's
Yeah,
still been hitting great at AAA, and I think that might be more of a thing when the rosters expand and you just
yeah,
get bring in another bat, maybe DH him every
right.
once in a while, maybe he can play first or just pinch hit too. But those are guys I think we are going to see. But
I got one more Cubs thing and then one more baseball thing.
great.
Do you have any concern at all about Alzolay? He's looked a little shaky the last couple outings. On Sunday, he looked a little rough. I think it was in the when he
He gave up two
I might be
runs, right?
confusing games. Yeah, yeah. I think he gave up 2 runs on Sunday, and then he didn't pitch Monday. That's when it looked like the Cubs might have gotten walked off. That was one of those like off the bat. You're like, oh
Yeah.
fuck. But and then last night, gave up 2 hits, didn't give up any runs, or yesterday afternoon. Like, do you have any concern at all, or no?
I have the same concern I had 2 weeks ago, I think, when I said on here, I think it was after he was brought in for a 4-run save
Yeah.
or like a 4-run non-save. Um, a day after like on a back-to-back day that he was pitching. I just think like the workload, the number of appearances on a guy who has like a pretty extensive injury history too, knock on wood.
Hmm.
I'm worried about him wearing down. Yeah, like that.
Sure.
But I'm not worried about the stuff really or the execution. Like he looked great yesterday, breaking off sliders that was getting on pitching ninja and stuff. The stuff is there. Also, I want to say, just obviously, Alzolay is like an 80 character guy. Everyone loves him.
Yeah.
He tweets before he gets off the field. After every win, he's just fun. So there shouldn't be a surprise. But in that game where he gave up a couple runs at Wrigley, almost blew the save, and then didn't. He celebrated in a way that I don't think a lot of closers do. Like you remember, like when
Great call. Yeah.
the brief period when Chapman was here, if he wasn't happy, even if they won, he was just pouting all over the place. And that's obviously a toilet
Yeah.
grade character, man. That guy
Hmm.
sucks. So whatever, that shouldn't be that surprising that he's in it. It's
He was
more.
sulking when Montero hit the fucking home run.
Yeah, man. That's just him. Alzolay had a really rough save and was celebrating like everything went great and was
Yeah.
just as happy as he would have been if he struck out the side. And I thought that's so cool. And I was tweeting about this too at Away Games Pod, where I was like, he is really climbing the list of closers I enjoy historically for the Cubs.
For
Stuff
sure.
is so fun. I feel good about him coming in. He's not scared, and boy, is he fun to root for. So, not worried about his stuff. Not worried about him mentally or anything. Being in a tough race, I just do worry about the wear and tear. That's kind
Sure.
of unprecedented on him.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it's such a good point. Like I think closers particularly have this mindset of like in many cases they do have to be perfect, right? They come into a
Hmm.
one-run game, there's no margin for error, but I think Alzolay understands that like his job as closer is to make sure the Cubs hold on and win the game. And if
Yeah,
that means giving up 2 runs and you still win by one, you still did your job. So
totally.
yeah, I like that a lot. My baseball thing, I don't know if you saw Otani, no more pitching this season. He is out for the season.
We have let's see, what's today's date? Today's date.
August 24th. I was actually
Okay.
hoping I might be able to see him at Citi Field this coming weekend.
Oh yeah. So, and you might see him hit. I don't think they put him
Yeah.
on the IL yet, and he might be hitting through it. But August 23rd, 2023 might be the most Angels day in history. The
Trout comes
most
back, Ohtani goes out.
well, Trout came back, and now Trout is on the IL again.
I
He
didn't even see
came
that part.
he came back for one day, re-aggravated the wrist that was surgically repaired. So he went on the IL the same day Ohtani might need Tommy John again. So baseball wise, man, that sucks. It just really sucks. That's always how it's been with Ohtani, right? Where it feels like, is this too good to be true? And it factually wasn't, because it has happened. The guy won a unanimous MVP, would have won the MVP again last year if Aaron Judge didn't break the American League
will win it this year.
home record. If he stopped playing today, he should win it unanimously again.
Yeah.
But it just, it really sucks, because he probably won't be pitching for next year either. And it comes at a tough, I mean, I'm not worried about the money he's going to make, but it comes at a tough time for him as he goes into free agency too. Cubs sign him, please. It's still, I mean, you'd figure maybe it knocks down his price a little bit. But it just sucks for baseball that both Trout and Ohtani are injured yet again, and on the same day. That sucks.
Well, you just think about how electric a Shohei start is on a day game in Detroit, and then you think about what it might be like to watch him in the playoffs, and it needs to happen sooner than later. And clearly, it's not going to happen this year. Maybe it won't happen next year, and it probably won't happen in Anaheim. But I just think as Trout for sure, and that's always been the case for the past 10 years, and definitely Shohei. It's like, we just got to see these guys in the playoffs. We got like a little taste of it in the WBC, and it was electric.
Yeah, that's how the year began. Those two guys, and it's ending with maybe neither one being a part of baseball, but certainly losing a lot of that magic. So that sucks. On the bright side, Pete Alonso threw a guy's first hit into the stands, and everyone lost their fucking minds. So that was good. Mason Whitney got the ball back, and Pete didn't mean it. So whatever. But yeah, that's all I got. If that's all you got.
That's all I got. If you're still listening now, come see me in Chicago, God damn it.
Yeah.
Zanies, Old Town, September 19th. It's a Tuesday. The Cubs are playing, and they might be in a playoff race. So I understand if you have to choose the Cubs over me, but I'll be planning to attend the game the next day with our buddy Ken Schultz. So hopefully the vibes are good.
That sounds great. September 19th, Zanies. Go see Adam, everybody. Go Cubs.